Welcome to Real Talk Christian Podcast, where we drink coffee or sparkling water and have real conversations on faith, culture, and society. This is Marc Hyde.
And Waterloo Chris Fuller.
Are we drinking the same one tonight?
We are.
Blackberry lemonade, baby. Well,
delicious.
Today we have a bit of a somber conversation we're going to have in lieu of the execution that just happened here in Indiana and some conversations inside the Facebook community. We are asking the question of, should Christians believe in the death penalty? Fuller, you ready for this conversation?
Let's go. I love the fact how you always turn your iPad
You're watching
down
on
to
YouTube, you see it. You see it like in the corner.
It's
and then
like up, down, up, down. You're like fidgeting.
And then
I'm gonna get you a fidget
when it's
spinner.
time to end the episode, I always close my iPad.
And then you're like, wait, why did I do that?
And then I open it up, and then we go again.
Yeah,
then we go
it's
again.
pretty funny. But anyways, buddy, how you doing this fine week?
I'm doing really good.
On this fine Thursday.
I'm doing really good. So, a couple weeks ago, I had the opportunity to go to Columbus, right? I was in Columbus, Ohio, where it rained for 3 straight days when we were at a convention, which sucked. But it was really, really good. And I've been spending 2 weeks on creating a whole new, potential avenue for the business to go down.
Nice.
Like, not just here's a new service, here's a new thing, but a new product, a new system, a new structure, and potentially it could be its own little sub-business. We'll see how that goes down. So my brain has been, very excited to get to my desk in the morning and very hard to leave at the end of the day, which is good for work time.
Sure.
But not always great for home time, because then sometimes I get a little grumpy because I'm either tired because I've been grinding all day, or my mind is stuck on work rather than the kids. So, so Beth and I have had some heart-to-hearts about your boy needs to step up a little bit and be a little more gracious. So I'm working on that right now. But what about you, my friend?
I mean, it's just the same old, another day in the Fuller household.
Another day, another dollar.
Another day, another stressful dollar that we have to earn. But, it is what it is. So no complaints. Family's good.
I'm trying to find this very specific post, and it refreshed on me.
Of what?
Now I'm trying to find it. I don't want to just blow it out the water, so I'm trying to scroll to find it. Oh, here we go. I asked a question in the Facebook community called, "What's a random thing that you would like to know about Fuller and I?" And there was a very big question left by Marlene. And Marlene, I think this is a full podcast episode might need to go towards this question. But then I'll ask the fun question. But the serious question that Marlene asked is, what is one struggle that you are going through right now in your spiritual journey? Pride, anger, not loving your neighbor, maybe put God in the back seat, etc. And how can your community, I'm guessing RTC, support you in that? That's a big question. We might need to dedicate a whole episode to that one, of just real talk with. That could be our wedding episode. That'd be a good wedding episode
for the drive down.
In case you're wondering, Fuller and I are going to go
In a few weeks.
We
have one of our listeners.
Getting married an hour and a half away from here.
Yeah, it's like an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes.
Not like Frericks, Peru, but Peru, Indiana.
Yeah, so
north of India.
And they sent us a nice little wedding invitation. Like, we know you guys probably can't come and all that. And I'm like, Mark, are we going? And Mark's like, we going.
We going. We got the wife's blessing, aka they wanted us out for whatever reason, and they said, go have fun.
Sure.
So we're going to a wedding, RTC style. We're going to record in the car, guys.
It's going to be awesome. Yeah, we're going to do at least 1, maybe 2 episodes in the car ride down and back. I mean, who knows?
And that would be a really good one. That's a good heart-to-heart. We're just driving. We cruising. We
don't have to have notes. We can just share our hearts.
I'll probably pick my nose, Janelle. I'm sorry. It's just, if I'm chilling, it's probably going to have a little pick and, wipe on the side of the car. Be fine.
The camera, we got to figure out camera stuff. We got to figure out.
I already got that figured out. We're going to do a little mount, and we're just going to do the phone, and basically go boop. Like that.
Okay. We got to figure out whose car we're taking. We got to do all that.
Oh, that's true. Normally we take your car, so I think we should take my car this
time. Your car?
My little blue car.
I'm good with that. You're probably better on gas mileage.
It's very good on gas mileage.
So let's take the little blue car. We're going to be riding the Blue Mobile RTC style.
And it's covered in Notre Dame stuff. So
perfect. Yeah. Even better. But all right.
Here's her lighthearted question that she says. Marlene, our friend from New Zealand, Kiwi, if there is one thing you could eat time and time again without getting tired of it, it tastes just as delicious as the first time as does the 100th time.
I already know it.
What would it be?
Sushi. Didn't even have to think.
But
sushi over and over again. Sushi.
Sushi doesn't count. That's the same as me saying McDonald's. I have McDonald's every day. Because sushi is there's 1,000 types of sushi. You got to pick one type. What's the roll?
One type.
You got to pick one roll.
Tuna sashimi.
Huh?
Tuna sashimi. It's just a piece of tuna. Raw tuna.
Inside of a roll?
No. just a piece of tuna.
And that's not sushi.
That is sushi. It's sashimi.
Sushi's got to be like in a seaweed roll.
Doesn't have to be.
Or some rice.
No. Sashimi.
Some little soy sauce.
Sashimi, tuna.
But
where I'm at.
but okay,
I'm
but
living
if you had to do an actual roll, a sushi roll,
I would
what would you
probably see that's a hard one because
Shrimp
I like
shrimp
a lot.
tempura?
No, not.
Did I even say that right?
I like shrimp tempura, but it is not. I wouldn't say it would be the one thing that I'd eat over and over and over and over again. Like it's good. It's like a dessert sushi piece. I would probably say, man, this is hard.
do? A bowl of mini wheats.
This is hard. I would probably say either the spicy tuna or like a rainbow roll, which is like a bunch of different types of fish and like avocado and all the good.
Is it the same tasting every time though, or is it like different based on what type of fish you get hit with?
Oh no, it depends on.
I don't know. I don't eat shrimp, so I don't know
the quality of where you go.
Right, that's fair. That's fair.
So if I had to pick a certain sushi restaurant here around this area. So my favorite's closed down, right? It was called Matuba's. It was over there on McKinley.
Yep.
They've been closed down for years. So now it's a toss-up.
Now it's a midwife center.
Now it's a toss-up between Haniori,
Okay.
which has really good sushi,
Yes.
and Soho. Soho has really good sushi too.
Out of all the places, those two?
Yeah, those two. Well, maybe Wuchi too.
I was gonna say I thought you were gonna say Wuchi, to be honest with you.
Wuchi's pretty good.
Wuchi was not good in the Tep and Grill department.
I never see if I go to a place with sushi, I'm not getting the Tep and Grill. I'm getting sushi. So
my answer is
Tep and Grill.
No, my answer for what food could I eat 100 times and it tastes the same and it tastes just as good. It's the same answer I give every time. Best meatloaf.
Oh.
But I was thinking, okay.
I bet if you ate it every day for 100 straight days, you would be tired about it. I guarantee.
With Gucci ketchup.
With the white trash condiment?
Nope, with the Gucci ketchup.
White trash.
Brown sugar.
John Chris, 2 weeks ago, we just talked about this.
No, but, gosh.
You're the one that played it, not me.
In all seriousness, I mean, yes, I do love meatloaf, don't get me wrong.
I absolutely love it. Could you eat it for like 365 straight days?
But there's like, but she just said 100. Homegirl just said 100.
Okay. But could you eat it for 100 straight days?
It'd be tough.
It would be tough.
But I'm like,
I like meatloaf, but I don't know meatloaf.
I'm thinking about all the different things that we've had. Like, dude, Beth has been crushing it this week. So you ready for this? We've had chicken salad. Okay. She makes a mean chicken salad. We've had hobo dinners, like chicken thighs with like the onions and the zucchini all in the grill. Excellent. What else did I cook on the? What did I cook on the grill the other day when everybody came over? I did chicken legs that was on the chicken drumsticks. That was good too. I'm smoking brisket on Monday for Memorial Day. But it's like I feel like my gut goes a nice mean Cubano.
So
nice mean Cubano sandwich.
So you're saying you're smoking a brisket?
I'm smoking a brisket Monday.
So how long are you smoking the brisket for, and how many pounds is the brisket?
It's not a big brisket. It's like so if you go to Costco or Sam's, you see that big old brisket.
Yep.
It's half of that.
Okay, so how many pounds? Like
I don't know,
8-pounder?
I don't know. I actually couldn't tell you.
Show me size, hand size. That big by that big, by like that thick.
Yeah.
So you're probably like
a little thinner.
You're probably like 10, 15 pounds, somewhere in that range. So how long are you going to smoke it for?
I don't know because I've always had to do rush smoking jobs and I don't want to do a rush smoke.
So
I'm going for like 6 to 8 is right now though.
Do you have an electric smoker? I can't remember.
Yep.
Okay. So here's what you do.
Okay.
Because I just did this.
Give me the scoop.
I just did this. We had a pork butt shoulder that I
It sounds so
smoked.
stupid. We had a pork butt shoulder.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Well, it's on the hind end, but it's a shoulder.
Yep. It's just funny. It's a butt shoulder.
I smoked it, slow smoked it for our small group last Tuesday. 18 hours.
Dang.
I started it Monday night.
But how do you like spritz it every hour on the hour?
Don't need to. You slow smoke it, and what I did is I wrapped the bottom in tin foil. Right. Came up like that way.
The whole time, so it never
just on the bottom, just on the bottom, just on the bottom.
Okay, like a little boat.
So basically, what it did,
a little boat,
was as the melt was the fat was rendering, so it was catching it.
So the fat was on the top, not the bottom.
Yeah. Okay. So it was catching it in the tin foil,
and then soaking it in,
and then soaking it back in.
Noise.
So you kept it there from dripping off.
So when you slow smoke, what temp are you smoking it at?
So I smoked it at
180.
No, I smoked it at 205 for 18 hours.
Okay.
And it was the best pulled pork I've ever had.
I got some lamb I still got to smoke too.
Oh, dude, I got a great recipe for smoked lamb too.
I think
that's what we do. That's what we do for Passover. So we did that Passover Seder at church.
Yep.
So we had
you smoked lamb for the church.
85. Well, I smoked some lamb for the church. So what I did is I smoked lamb and then I sliced it up and let people like put toothpicks out for people to try it. Right.
Yep. I love lamb.
But it was like everybody was like, "This is so good." I'm like, "It's delish, man.
It's delish.
It's so."
But
good.
did you hear what my actual answer was? What I'm going to go with? I'm going to go with a mean Cubano sandwich.
Yeah, the Cubano sandwich.
Cubano.
Yeah. Yep.
Best place in
for 100 straight days.
I can eat a Cubano for 100 straight days.
See, I don't know.
Absolutely,
if I could.
I could
for 100 days.
Absolutely. I ate
Sushi,
peanut butter
could.
and jelly all the time. Let alone come on. But
yeah, but not for 100 straight days. I love peanut butter and jelly. But
I've had two amazing Cubanos.
Sure.
One is Chicory Cafe.
Okay.
Chicory Cafe's got a mean Cubano.
They got a bacon mac and cheese that's
actually, and the General Cafe is pretty good too. General Cafe is a good Cubano. But you know what is the surprise Cubano?
Okay.
Hacienda.
See, those aren't true Cubanos, though. You got to go down to Florida to get a true one. For them people that came over from Cuba. And those are good.
Well, that's the same. Like, you can't get no real Mexican down, and unless you're down in, like, Mexico or, like,
that's
Texas
not true.
or, like,
that's
San
not true.
Diego.
That's not true. You can go up to Niles right now and get real Mexican food. Because the people that are running it are from Mexico.
I'm just going to go Frankie's Tacos. But I would say Marlene, a mean Cubano. That's what I'm going to say.
We've been talking about food for a long time.
We are apparently hungry, guys.
I wasn't hungry until we started talking about food. I love it. But
anyways, and for all you haters who say we talk too long, you're welcome.
So, and for all those who have been wanting the banner, you're welcome.
You're welcome, Doug.
So,
all right, let's get these reviews.
We're not drinking any coffee. We're both drinking blackberry lemonade, as stated at the very beginning.
Banging.
And so let's.
You have a comment about that one? It's banging.
It's good.
So we got two reviews to read. Man.
I'm going to read these reviews just like every week as of recent. We are trying to get through all the reviews, which we're still over a year behind. But maybe, you know what? That would be another good show. Let's just do read the reviews and talk about the reviews as we read them. Like that would be a good travel back from the wedding.
Because it's might have some different thoughts and ideas.
I don't know. That's just a thought. But that will get us caught up on all the reviews. That's what I was thinking. True. All right. This one's from Couch Mom from over a year ago. 5 stars, great podcast. I've known Marc and Chris for many years. They're like my own sons. I'm so proud of them for the hard work they put in to help us all understand the deep and fundamental things of God. But also they are fun and relevant to today. They both have incredibly busy lives, but they prioritize getting the truth of God out to all generations. Thank you, guys. Couch Mom. We were trying to sit here.
Who the heck is Couch Mom?
Who is Couch Mom? Who is like a mom to us? Because there's like a lot of people that come to mind when we're like, oh yeah, they're like a mom to us.
But no, it could be that person. No, it could be that person. No, it could be this person. So
I really think it's Jan.
You think it's Jan Pfeiffer?
Maybe.
I mean, Jan Pfeiffer for sure, but Jan Pfeiffer ain't no Couch Mom.
Yeah,
my mind went either Roxanne or
maybe
Kathy.
Oh,
those are my two thoughts.
Kathy
Minnis or.
But I don't know. Kathy,
make yourself known.
Yeah, reach out to us. Yeah, Couch Mom from over a year ago. All right, and then the other one was Megas 16.
Circusin, bro.
Megas 16. Amazing podcast / community, 5 stars. I've been listening to this podcast for a little over 2 years now, and I've gained so much from it. I'm also part of the community page on Facebook that has been a breath of fresh air. I recommend to anyone looking for something to light a spark in their walk with Christ.
Love it.
That is so cool. We appreciate it. And as always, if you have not reached out to us and gotten your free mini swag bag, reach out to us, realtalkchristianpodcast@gmail.com. And let us know that you left the review and request your free mini swaggy baggie.
Swaggy baggie. And just for the record, on Spotify, we are up to, it's loading, 1.6 thousand reviews, which are rating, which is stinking awesome. So keep those coming. Keep them coming. Apple Podcast, we just crossed 310. So let's get this thing to 350. So if you haven't left a rating and review, please do so. Download your stinking Apple Podcast app and leave it. Your stinking podcast app. That's the one I use, so I can't say nothing. But so to jump into today's conversation, when we sent feelers out into the community, we were like, hey, what should we cover? This was a topic that was brought up, and then multiple people responded to this. Multiple people. And then there was back and forth, and there's the question of, well, if Christians are really pro-life, then why are we death penalty. And then there's other ones where it's like, well, the Old Testament talks about it all the time. There's other ones where it's the fact of, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth type idea. There's other ones where it's like, if a penalty is not severe enough, people aren't going to stop doing crime. Then there's other people where it's like, there might be people on death row that shouldn't be there.
Sure.
Or, there's always the argument of, I think it was a Thomas Aquinas one, or the fact of, like, if you put people on death row and you kill them, you could potentially, as a Christian, take away their opportunity to follow Jesus. Like, there's a thought for that. So, with this conversation of people brought it to light inside the Facebook group, and then this just past week, I'm going back we're trying to be better about not, saying dates on the show, so that way it makes it sound like it's always real, but we batch record these things. So it's May 23rd.
Wow, you just really predated us.
I did, because 3 days ago, we had a execution here in Indiana by lethal injection. And I was reading, this is only the second one in the last couple decades.
You said 16 years,
so I think
right?
16 years, and I don't want to quote exactly 16 because I wasn't sure. But, there's times whenever someone is on death row, and I should say there's only a handful of states that even approve of it, Indiana being one. And sometimes people are transported to Indiana to do it. But, with this whole conversation around, we just had an execution, and potentially the execution was botched. Now, the guy still died through lethal injection, but there's some speculation of, was it botched? Did it actually do something wrong and cause severe pain and reactions and things like that before he died?
Was it inhumane, or was it
inhumane or not? Right. But that's not even just the conversation. The conversation is more the fact of, should that even happen in the first place? And this is both a political conversation, it's also a spiritual conversation, and it's a social conversation, it's an economic conversation, and it's a big one.
Sure.
And so, this is a conversation that I don't want us to take lightly, but at the same time, it's one that we as Christians need to be able to have an answer for, I feel like. Because if people say, well, if you're pro-life, why are you pro-death penalty? Because normally speaking, those who are more on the right side of the political aisle or more conservative nature say, yeah, death penalty, totally cool. And then those on the left-hand side normally say no. And then there's, I would say, a lot of people who are somewhere in the middle going, I don't know what to do with this. I'm just not going to I'm just going to make sure I don't get on death row. Like, that's kind of what a lot of people do have to say. And so there are different views that people have here in America, specifically around the death penalty. And I kind of have three that I thought through, read some articles, and these are kind of like the three common beliefs, at least here in America, not overseas, just in America, about the death penalty. Number one is the death penalty should never even be a conversation or a practice. In other words, people are completely opposed to it. Doesn't matter how bad the crime is, doesn't matter. The death penalty should not even exist. It should be completely outlawed. It's inhumane. Number two is, on a personal level, we should not take someone's life in response to what they did. In other words, like, if someone, we just gonna call it what it is. If someone kills, like, your brother, you don't go kill the person that killed your brother. Like,
eye for the eye and tooth for a
exactly,
tooth.
like that you should not do on a personal level. But the government is allowed to carry out the death penalty if it fits the crime in the severest of cases. So it shouldn't be used flippantly, but in the severest, like Timothy McVeigh, Oklahoma City bombing. There's a lot of people who called that as justified because of the amount of just pain and anguish that has happened.
Sure.
Or, even Saddam Hussein with taking him out. Like, that technically was a death sentence.
Sure.
But the punishment fit the crime in the most severest of sense. That's another view. The other one is the fact that the death penalty is an acceptable form of punishment because God ordained it in the Old Testament. Like, God ordained it. It's the way the Old Testament was, so it should be good for us too. And so those are kind of the three views in America regarding the death penalty. And so in the Old Testament, there are different reasons and different acts that people could do that would actually cause the death penalty to be applied. So the Old Testament law commanded the death penalty for various acts. One is murder, Exodus 21:12. Another one is actually kidnapping, Exodus 21:16. Bestiality, Exodus 22:19. Adultery, Leviticus 20:10. Homosexuality, Leviticus 20:13. Being a false prophet, interesting one, which we've talked about on here quite a bit. Deuteronomy 13:5. Prostitution and rape, the committer. And Deuteronomy 22:24, and then there's other severe crimes as well.
And then you get into like the Mishnah, and we see this with Christ.
The Mishnah. Remind me what the Mishnah.
The Mishnah is the expansion of
the commentary from the Jewish people.
Right, exactly.
Well, not Jewish people,
of the Levitical priests and Pharisees and all that. But they talk about adultery, right? And not just the man, but it's the man and the woman, right? Or not just the woman, it's the man and the woman. You got it in here, but they expound on that Leviticus 20:10 passage on, like, even if you knew about it, according to the Mishnah, if you were a friend, say you knew that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was.
So not an accomplice, but like, and not that you drove the getaway car, but you was in.
Like you knew what was going on or helped with it.
Honestly, that's how Bonhoeffer got caught. Was he was by association. A lot of people think that he was actively trying to go kill Hitler, but he was just in my opinion, he was just in the conversation.
Sure.
But yeah, that's fascinating. And that's why when Jesus was brought the woman caught in adultery and they threw her before Jesus. Right. And it's like, what are you gonna do with her? She was caught in adultery, you gonna kill her? And then he just, went down and squiggled some stuff in the grass, and eventually everyone disappeared. And he said he was without sin cast the first stone. And then, she stood up and like, where are your accusers? And there are none. He goes, neither do I. Go and sin no more. Right. Because in Jewish culture, you also had to have witnesses of the fact that no one stood there to accuse. Right. And if there's no one to accuse, then you can't be committed. But then the other question is where's the homeboy?
Right.
Like,
it was a big question.
Where's the dude?
It was a big question.
Where's the dude? It was a trap. And so, with these conversations, we can be like, okay, and this is a conversation that some people have, is the fact of, there's different dispensations. Mm-hmm. God works in different ways. The Old Testament, and there's different views of covenant theology and dispensationalism, and there's 1,000 different views in between. But people say, like, in the Old Testament, God dealt with people differently than in the New Testament. So God was very, of course he did the death penalty, but the New Testament with Jesus, with grace, the death penalty is no more. But that's just Old Testament. That's how God spoke to people back then. And so the question then becomes okay, so does the New Testament talk about any sort of death penalty in some way, shape, or form? Because you got to remember, when we're talking about the Old Testament, this is not you taking eye for an eye. Now, it does talk about the fact of if you kill someone's brother and they chase you down and you flee and you go to the cities like the sanctuary cities. So there's some things like that. But you got to remember, this is Jewish law as well. So like government. New Testament, Romans 13, 1-7 says this. Let everyone submit to governing authorities, since there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are instituted by God. So then, the one who resists the authority is opposing God's command, and those who oppose it will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers are not a terror of good conduct, but to bad. Do not be unafraid of the one who is good, but if you are wrong, be afraid, because it does not carry the sword for no reason. For it is God's servant, the avenger, to bring wrath on those who do wrong. Therefore, you must submit not only because of the wrath, but also because of your conscience. And for this reason, you pay taxes, since the authorities are God's servants, continually tending to these tasks. So in other words, as the next verse says, pay your obligations to everyone. Tax to those who owe taxes, tolls to those who owe tolls, respect to those who owe respect, and honor to those who do honor. Why? Because the government's job is to carry out the law and the vengeance and the sword, which equals unalive. You did.
At times.
So how do we process these then? Where the Old Testament is told, you do these certain things to these specific people. And we're like, okay, that's just Old Testament. But the New Testament, we're supposed to pay our tithe. Hello. Supposed to pay our tolls and our taxes and our dues to the government so they can carry out the acts of the government, which according to this passage is what? Destroying evildoers and protecting the innocent.
Well,
right? Because it says,
kind of.
If you do what's good, you don't have to worry about it. But if you do wrong, you best be careful because you done messed up and the government's going to come at you.
It's
to do wrath.
It's an exhortation to say, look, you're good servants. What do you have to fear? Because only the evildoers are fearful of the government.
Right, exactly.
Basically what Paul's saying.
But and then it says there in verse 4 where it says, I lost. Verse 3. Do not, where is it? For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Right. Do you want to be unafraid of those who do authority? Do what is good for your office proof. For God's servant, for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid because it does not carry the sword in vain. Because it's God's servant to be an avenger,
which is
Captain America, to bring wrath on those who do wrong.
Which is curious because when was Romans written? During the Roman
not invasion, but the Roman
rule
over the Jews. Yeah.
And what was happening
this was just handfuls of years after Jesus was crucified.
Sure, but what was still happening to the church? Maybe not as much by the Romans, but by the Jews.
Oh, they were being persecuted.
Absolutely, there was persecution. Yet Paul is encouraging to submit to the governing authorities, which was Rome.
Which makes an interesting question of if the American Revolution was actually a just war or not, according to this passage, which is a fun conversation. I'm just going to say it's a fun conversation. But your boy's American flag is flying right now between Memorial Day and Labor Day, so that is true there too. But, so here's the question then.
Yep.
How do we process this New Testament passage and then the Old Testament passages, all right? So here's an interesting thought, all right? God is the one who instituted capital punishment, because it says, whoever sheds man blood, by man his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God he made man. This is before Israel. This is before the law of Moses. This is Genesis 9. Talking about Cain and Abel.
Which is,
Right?
no.
Genesis 9?
No, because Genesis 6 is talking about the beginning of
Crap,
Noah.
hold on.
This is way after that. Genesis 6 is where God talks about the mighty men of old and all that stuff.
Oh, my bad.
So you're three chapters after that, bro.
My bad, guys. We in Ezra right now. We already passed down to Genesis, but in our Bible reading. But it says, so whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. I brought the King Jimmy in because I love it. For in the image of God he made man. So if God instituted capital punishment even before the law, and remember, Jesus is God, part of the Trinity, then wouldn't Jesus be for the death penalty? So here,
I'm saving my thoughts for the end.
You're good. So I have a lot of questions to talk about, but I'm going to do some scripture here.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
So Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5:3-12 says this, and this is normally in response to this. Jesus says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, they will be comforted. Blessed are the humble, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. You are blessed when they insult you and persecute you and falsely say every kind of evil against you because of me. Be glad and rejoice, because your reward is great in heaven. For that is how they persecuted the prophets who were before you." Then Paul in Romans 12 says, "Don't avenge yourselves." 12:9. "Don't avenge yourselves, beloved, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, and I will repay, says the Lord." Other passages, Deuteronomy 32:35 and 36 says, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay.
Which
In
is
due
the quote
time."
from Romans.
Yep. "In due time, their foot will slip, for their day of disaster is near, and their doom is coming quickly. For the Lord will vindicate his people, have compassion on his servants, when he sees that their strength is gone and no one remains slave or free." 1 Thessalonians 4-6, "And no one should ever violate or exploit his brother in this regard, because the Lord will avenge such acts, as those who have already told you and solemnly warned you." Hebrews 10:30, "For we know the one having said, vengeance is mine," you kept in the theme, "I will repay. And again, the Lord will judge his people." And then finally, Luke 18:7-8 says, "Will not God bring about justice for his elect who cry out to him day and night? Will he continue to defer their help? I tell you, he will promptly carry out justice on their behalf." So here's something for us to talk about tonight, and then we'll talk, right?
Sure.
I'm going to read these, then we'll go. GotQuestions.org says, "Christians should never rejoice when the death penalty is employed, but at the same time, Christians should not fight against the government's right to execute perpetrators of the evils of most crimes." But what happens when Christians hold the authority in the government that make decisions? That's an interesting question. The Apostle Paul, should I keep reading? Should we talk about that one?
Well, why don't you read them and then we'll go back and start at the first
The
one. Just
Apostle
read them all.
Paul didn't live in a system where people had a voice, just one where it was what it is, it be what it be, it is what it is. In fact, at one point, the Apostle Paul said that if he committed any crimes worthy of death, then he isn't going to stop them. Like, that's a quote from Acts 25, verse 11. He says, "If I have done anything committed to death, I will not stop you." So how do we handle his view of the government, where if he did something worthy of death, go ahead and kill him? How do we handle his view of the government versus the idea that today's culture, we can change and influence the government? Another one, how do we handle terrible offenses like mass murder, serial killers, rapists, the stuff like the Diddy trials, and so many gross and grotesque things where so many people say the death penalty should never be a part of it, but then all over social media, what do you see? Kill the pedos, Take care of these people. Take them out. They don't deserve to live. Like, they have these ruthless things that they're saying because we are crying out for the justice and for the vengeance. So how do we handle terrible offenses like that? And then last one, why are Christians pro-life when it comes to abortion while at the same time favoring the death penalty and supportive of war, which could also be constituted as a death penalty for those who are going against us? So in regard to the death penalty, and there's some other things that I did not even bring into this conversation, how do we handle this?
So, it's an interesting fact because you,
a lot of
you talk about, that's all right. You talk about Romans 13 and the government authority and God placed them over them. And okay, so they're there for, just judgment being rooted by the hand of God and God giving them authority.
Yep.
So what happens, and this is, I'm going to throw it
man,
birdie style back here.
So I like throwing it back to you, though.
What happens when the Nazi regime comes and they say being a Jew is against the law and worthy of the death penalty, or being black, or being a homosexual, which we see in the Old Testament, it was worthy of death too. But so what do we do with that? Is that a Romans 13? And so I think, to me, it gets back to, yes, the government is a governing body that holds and seeks justice, but there's the ultimate authority, God. And as it comes to Christians, we have to respect and obey the higher authority out of the two, right? So just like, Corrie ten Boom, I think, her and her family, they obeyed the higher authority. They obeyed God's authority when they were, hiding that they themselves were Jews and trying to help other Jews escape the city and stuff like that. And just different stories. And, I think,
but they flat were like Paul, where it says like, "Yo, we know this is a crime worthy of death, but we're going to do it, because it's the right thing,
right? Absolutely, because they're obeying the higher authority, right? But does that make it right in the eyes of God? Right? Was that being a Jew worthy of death in the eyes of God? Well, we would say no, because they're just chosen people, right?
And they're just made in God's image,
right?
Like,
so I think there is you got to be careful and not make a blanket statement of, if the government says it's okay, then it's got to be okay because of Romans 13, because we see the Nazi regime and stuff like this where it wasn't okay, that those things were, or if you want to even go into like the belief system of Islam, right? And all the beheadings and everything that go on over there. Are we saying that is okay because those are the governing bodies over in those Middle Eastern countries? Is that okay? Those executions of Christians and stuff like that, persecutions that Romans did to Christians in the early church, they were the governing authorities. And so I think that there are things that obey the government, but obey the higher authority ultimately. Now, how does that all tie in with capital punishment, right? And how Christians should view capital punishment. And this one I'm a little conflicted on.
Yeah.
Internally, right? Because the protector in me would love to say, yeah, those murderers, those rapists, those pedos, kill them all. Go straight up Anakin Skywalker with the littles. Sorry, my kids are upstairs.
Order 66.
My kids are upstairs right now watching Star Wars with Janelle, so. But it's like,
jealous.
Kill them.
Honestly, I'm not going to lie. I kind of want to go up there and watch Star Wars
I know.
with them too.
So, but, then there's the other side where we're told to turn the other cheek, that they will persecute us. And it's like, okay, but, we're supposed to forgive. We're supposed to show these mercies. We are deserving of death, ultimately. And yet Christ came and saved us. And so there's this conflict, this war within me of what is right, what is wrong. Because you have scriptures that are clear of show compassion, show mercy, and then you have scriptures that are clear of governing bodies, or, hey, like your Genesis 9 passage, if a man sheds another man's blood, basically is worthy of death. And so it's like, at the end of the day, I would say I would not want to be in a position where I had to make that choice, whether it was right or wrong.
This is where it gets weird. Is I had I had the same conversation with Soche, a couple of weeks ago on the playground because his kids were in Upward.
Sure, yeah.
And it was based off of our Christian Nationalist podcast because he's like, "Oh, buddy, what did Marc and Fuller?" He goes, "I saw you guys release that and went, what did Marc and Fuller say?"
What are they doing?
and so that started the conversation that him and I were having, and the fact of it's so wild because so many Christians I'm talking like practicing Christians will look at other people and say Christians should have no power. Like, we're not supposed to be a government controlling power.
Yeah.
But the problem is with a democracy where you elect people to represent you,
absolutely,
there's eventually going to be a tipping point where if you are truly a believer and try to bring people into the kingdom, where all of a sudden Christians are the ones who are in the midst of doing the voting, so you're going to send someone who's of like-minded faith and practice, and then eventually what happens if that gets to the top where you got like moral majority stuff, or you actually do get someone who is actually a believer into these power authorities of power. It makes no sense for us to just say Christians should have no power because our government is built upon that. Now, the government should be the greatest of servants too. Like, let's just call it what it is. And I'm a lot more of a small government guy. Like, I am a very much small government guy. Like, the older I get, I feel like the more of the Libertarian Party I think through. But that's where it gets hard with this, is the fact of that all of a sudden once Christians get, I don't want to say control of the government of power, which I'm just going to say what it is, but if Christians are supposed to be ones of peace and forgiveness and mercy, but then we have to, commit someone's life to Skid Row, how do you handle that balance? Because I feel like it's one thing for us to say as individuals, you like something or you don't, but when you got to make the call, and you got to make the decision, that's a weight, man.
And 60, 70
and
years
that's
ago.
why policy needs to be written in the light of day, not in the darkness of night, obviously.
Yeah, I think 60, 70 years ago that we'd be having a different conversation and different viewpoints.
100%.
Because, back then it was the mindset
I didn't put the stats down.
The mindset back then was, absolutely, capital punishment's good. It's from God. Today, I think it's a little bit different. If I were the leader, taking somebody's life would have to be filled with thought and prayer, and I'm almost positive I would have sleepless nights contemplating over whether this was right or wrong, whether this was something that God would have me do or not do, based upon my viewpoint as a Christian and of what I deserve, right? And what Christ has saved me out of. And I was undeserving. Now, there's a difference, right? There may not be a repentant heart from these guys, right? And then there may be a repentant heart, which would probably make me sway one way or the other at this point in my life. And I'm not saying, hey, this is gospel truth. This is what it is. I'm just sharing my thoughts.
Fuller.
This is my thoughts and feelings on this.
Thoughts with Fuller.
I tend to want to see justice done, but at the same time want to show compassion and mercy. And so, and I think it's more of a punishment to be like, hey, guess what? You're just going to be in a cell the rest of your life, than to be like, well, I'm going to just take you out of your suffering.
And that's it.
So it's, to me, it's like, I think they pay more, right? There's more justice served, but then you go, well, yeah, but they took someone's life. Shouldn't they have to offer something in repayment, a life of their own? And it's like, yeah, I get what you're saying. And people, you guys can all disagree with me. That's fine. This is just how I feel at this moment in the raw right now. And I would say I would struggle, just like self-defense, just like everything. I would struggle to take another human's life as I am right now. And I'm not saying...
And I feel like self-defense is a whole different conversation.
Absolutely. But I'm saying in general, right? And I've had this conversation with my small group, and even people at church. I go, look, this is why I can't be on the security team. Like, yeah, I could shoot. I can do all this stuff. I've practiced. But I couldn't do it because I couldn't take a life. I can't take a life. I'm not saying it's wrong in that moment. I'm not going to argue that. I'm just saying I can't do it for myself. I couldn't live with myself afterwards for doing it. Now, when it comes to capital punishment, again, I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I could pull the switch or make that decision that says, yeah, I'm going to end this person's life. Now, I could say, yeah, that person's going to spend the rest of their life in prison, in a cell, by themselves. And let them really stew and have to think about and relive those moments and suffer with that.
And I think, this is where it gets a little bit different. Like I don't want to say step away from the Bible and go into stats and real, but this is real talk right now.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the stats about how many people are sentenced to death row, Skid Row, whatever you want to call it, here's the stat. In 2022, 2,270 prisoners were under the sentence of death.
Which, if you think about it, in the grand scheme of things, how many prisoners how many prisoners are there per year?
Massacres are nuts.
Right. So, I mean, that's really...
Percentage is not a lot, but that's still individuals.
Right.
But here's the deal. Since 1973, at least 200 people have been exonerated and released and proven innocent from death row.
Could you imagine that you make the call to kill somebody and then evidence comes out later that they were innocent?
And a lot of these true crime podcasts are actually getting people off of it because they're doing better reporting than what people did.
Well, and just the science has come so far in the past 50 years.
And yes, there are bad cops and there's bad players and there's bad things.
But again, the forensic science that we have now, we didn't have 50
whole different
years
ballgame.
ago. I mean, so
and that's a part of the conversation is the fact of why would we send people to death row when there's a chance that obviously if you point to,
if you on camera killing somebody,
if you walk into a church and light it up, that's.
But then again, right? All right, so take that scenario, right? Well, there's people that walk into churches and drag pastors out and kill them on the streets right now,
like overseas, right?
Overseas, right? But what do their family do? I read so many stories, and they're not all stories like this. I'm sure there's some that don't forgive, but a lot of the families forgive and try to win them to salvation.
And that's what, but going back to the beginning, that's where it says on a personal level, we shouldn't take someone's life. But
yeah, right.
The government can do what they want to do,
Well, yeah, to an extent. Again, I go back to the Holocaust, right? The government wasn't right. That government wasn't right to take them people's lives. Sorry, they weren't. So, and I know that's an extreme on the opposite scale, but, I don't like blanket statements.
And this is it. And so, with the death penalty, back in the day, it used to be a death sentence was you'll be hanged at dawn. Or you're done. There is no right now. I don't know if you guys have actually read the statistics of how expensive it is for an inmate.
Oh, it's super expensive.
It's over $1 million per person sentenced to death row because it's way more court hearings, way more trials.
Sure.
You have to get more security, both the facility and the technology and the people. It's a whole different ball game.
So it's
also expensive now.
I hear you on that, but then I hear. Of how many people are in jail for long periods of time they were busted with marijuana.
Oh, yeah.
And how much money we waste for those, right? It's for those, listen, I get that there needs to be something, right?
I am definitely a prison reform person, yes.
But we're wasting a lot of money on that, but we're not willing to spend the money on somebody who committed a serious crime.
And that's just it. And this is what gets confusing is there's the counterbalance where it's the guy who was just executed here in Indiana, his crime was he killed a police officer over 2 decades ago. Sure. That was his crime, and he was sentenced to death because of it. But then you got other dudes who literally has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos on his phone of
child
everything. I don't even want to say what the things are because it makes me
child stuff. We'll just leave it at that.
If you think of the most grotesque evil, times it by 2, worse than Diddy.
Right.
That's still pretty bad. But you see stuff like him, and he had 1 day in prison. I'm like, now the question is what information does he know that he's willing to give up?
But still, if we're seeking justice, it shouldn't have mattered.
Right.
Right. And so it's where's the justice in that? Where's the justice for those children that were used, abused, and exposed in that way that, where's the justice for that?
And so there is a whole problem with justice. And there is something to be said about the more in poverty you are and impoverished you are, the more chances of longer court hearing dates. Right. And the richer you are, the more you can pay to get out of them. That's a fact, not a good one.
That's crazy.
But, with this whole conversation of the death sentence, I am on the side more of, I don't think in our culture that the death penalty should be inflicted. I'm actually more on we shouldn't have the death penalty side. And I don't think I would have said that literally recently until I started actually doing some studying for this specific conversation. Because before it was just I don't like it, but I don't really know. It is what it is,
yeah.
But when you see the idea of the fact of these people have to be they're death penalty inmates for decades. Why not just let them live out the rest of their days in prison? Some people will say, there's always the counter arguments of, well, if we don't have, the death penalty, then people are going to be more likely to commit these heinous crimes. But it ain't stopped nobody yet.
But there's a difference between death row, right, and the cost of death row
versus literally getting beheaded, right?
Well, or just prison in general, right?
Right. Yeah.
There's a huge cost difference there, and I hate to say this, but usually people that end up on death row, they usually get themselves taken care of in a prison, right? Because It just happens like that.
Is it?
When you put criminals with other criminals, things happen, right? And I'm not saying that to like, oh, well, see, they can do the job for us. I'm just saying that that's the truth. Like, but there's a difference in if people are worried about cost. I don't know. I guess I value human life to the point where I don't think we should take human life. But I also know sticking them in with if we just put them in general population too, things are probably going to happen.
Depends on the crime. But this is where it gets wild because it's like, we got some people who, yes, they are murderers.
Sure.
They're I mean, you could even have, that's the thing with prison. You have anything from a murderer to a bond forger to, someone who, like you said, just got busted for pot. Like you could have, all these different avenues, and there are more higher security prisons and things like that too. And, but there's so many things like gang related murders, but then you get down to, I'm talking like the most evil of crimes, like sex trafficking, sex exploitation, which is, I mean, flat out modern day slavery, and it's all over the place, and people aren't scared to do it. Like there are usually evil people.
Usually those people are the people that get taken out in general population.
If they get caught.
No, I'm talking about taken out in prison by other prisoners.
I'll say, but if they get caught, they have to get caught first.
Yeah, right. I'm just saying if they're in prison.
Sadly. But yes, no, you're right. But but I'm thinking like there's so many evil people in this world. I mean, you can talk everything about like the evil, heinous crimes of political leaders all across the world, all across history.
Absolutely.
And so it's like, would we look at someone like let's go down this path because it's an easy target, right?
Okay.
Hitler, right?
Yep.
We captured him.
Yep.
We put him in jail.
Yep.
If we had no death penalty, he would never be killed. He would just sit in prison the rest of his days.
Yep.
Now, and this is where it's like in Mexico right now. Mexico, there is no death penalty. So I know like there's an episode of there's one of Madam Secretary.
Yep.
Here you go, Sabrina, Madam Secretary, where
bingo,
where there was the Mexican gang lord and drug lord where he was in Mexico, but him and his people took out a whole bunch of people at the border. And so in America, he would have the death penalty, but Mexico, there is no death penalty.
Sure.
So they're trying to get him, and they actually ended up kidnapping him and bringing him back to America. Like it was nuts. And then there's this whole standoff thing. But then there's always the thing about like how many times do these people still run their things inside a prison?
Sure.
So even though the gang leader, the drug lord, the whoever, they still run in the show, but inside they prison cells. And so like the problem still hasn't gone away. And so I know there's some people where it's like, but if we don't cut off the head of the snake and we just let them live out their life in prison, they can still do heinous things. And let's be honest, the hard reality is the fact of we might think we're cutting off the head of the snake, but a new head's going to show up.
Sure.
Like it's almost
or
like
four in its place.
Like that old the old mythical thing where just like Hercules
Hydra.
Yeah, Hercules was chopping off the head, and more heads just kept showing up. Like it's
every head he chopped off, two came in its place.
Right, and so that's where it gets hard with this. And so I do feel like the government needs to be in a place, and I know this. I mean, even scripturally, where the government needs to be in a place to take care of the evil people, take care of those who are doing heinous, wrong things, and protect the innocent. Like that's part of the government's job.
Yeah.
Is the government always good or not? That's a different conversation. But with this conversation specifically, I do like what gotquestions.org says, though, where it says Christians should never rejoice in the death penalty.
Sure.
It does say, though, but at the same time, Christians should not fight against the government's rights to execute perpetrators of most evil crimes. That's where I do disagree, because what happens when the government goes bad and start executing, like you said, the innocent?
Right.
And so I feel like it's a bit of a cop-out if you have a good government in place. They'd be like, oh, well, the government's fine. They're just doing what they're
I think the government needs to be kept in check. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean.
So let's go full picture. I feel like I've been talking a lot this episode. I want to bring it back to you. So when you look at scripturally as a Christian, not just politically, but scripturally as a Christian, we see the death penalty things in the Old Testament, but then we also see counter arguments where David was a murderer and David was an adulterer. But he wasn't killed. You see, Rahab was a prostitute, but she wasn't killed. You see some of these other folks that are in here that committed a lot of these, maybe not a lot of these things, but some of these things, and they weren't executed. They weren't killed. So how do we handle, reasons for death in the Old Testament? We do see that the government has a job to do. Jesus does talk about the fact that, we're not supposed to take vengeance upon ourselves, but in fact, you're blessed if you're persecuting these different things. And then even in Deuteronomy, the same book where some of these things about, what you're supposed to do about killing certain people, it says, vengeance is mine. I will take care of it. Don't you worry.
Well, and
then you got even Paul saying, don't worry, boo-boo. God got you.
I think the big difference is that it's you look at the passages in Leviticus or Deuteronomy, and it's God saying, this is what is deserving. This is what they shall be stoned to death for, or, executed, however you want to put it. It's these things. And then Christ or Paul saying in Romans that, listen, in a good government, the government takes care of these things, right? And so I think there's no contradiction in what's going on, that we should, as Christians, value life. And it is God's vengeance that takes care of the rest, right? Mm-hmm. If there's a God-ordained government, Romans 13, they will take care of protecting the innocent and punishing those that are evil. On the same flip, there are certain things that God had ordained for the Israelites that were punishable by death, but it was commands given to the Israelites, for the Israelites, to keep them set apart. So there was that aspect of it. God himself was the governing authority during that time. And so that's where we get into the vengeance is mine, I will repay. This is why we're supposed to turn the other cheek, because really it's ultimately God's judgment that is coming on these people when they commit these sins. And so I think as a Christian, looking at it from a biblical standpoint, it is ultimately God's decision whether a person shall be executed or not executed. And I think if you have a good government, then God leads the leaders to decide that or not. Kind of like what Got Questions said. You don't necessarily have to fight against it. But again, on the flip side of what we are in a democratically elected nation, there is a sense of keeping the government in check by sometimes questioning or these types of peaceful protest type things of keeping them in check. And having those checks and balances of they're supposed to serve the people. Why aren't you serving the people in this? Mm-hmm. So there's the balance of that. But I think at the end of the day, biblically, the judgment lies with God.
So brass tacks.
Okay.
If someone said, if you had to vote to get rid of the death penalty or not, and say, nope, I don't want the death penalty anymore, or in its rightful place, it has a place in society, what would you say?
So I can give you the off the cuff, but ultimately my answer would be able to take much thought and prayer for me before I could say yay or nay. But if it was like you got 20 seconds to vote,
you're in the poll, homie.
You're in the poll right now. You've got to vote. I would say probably abolish it, but that's just me. That's where I stand. If I was, hey, you have to decide right now, but ultimately, I'd be like, no, I need a lot of prayer and thought on this.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at is I think it would be wise as a whole to abolish the death penalty. Just because there's been people that have been released from death row.
Sure.
And there's other things and there's evil things at play that we just don't even know. But I'll be honest with you, when I hear of oh, that's cool. I just got a really fun text about advertising in the Memorial Day parade.
Nice.
But where the heck was I going with this? But with the people that are just down, I mean, and I'm not talking about like, yeah, they murdered somebody, they pulled the trigger, they did some heinous, not even heinous, but like they robbed a bank at gunpoint and stuff like that, or even just they walked into a school and lit that thing up, and or the Las Vegas shootings or things like that. I could look at that and be like, yeah, you don't deserve to see society again. Like you don't deserve it,
right?
Like you
find a gulag and put them in the gulag,
right? Like you don't deserve to see the light of day.
Sure.
Do you deserve to have your life taken from you? I've heard so many people where it's like the families cry justice of you killed my loved one, so you should die too. But I've also heard that that doesn't satisfy losing.
Right.
Killing one for two kills don't make alive.
Yeah, right.
But I've never had to be in that position, so I don't know.
Right.
I've had my dad taken from me in a car accident because someone made a boneheaded decision. But again, that wasn't malicious intent.
Sure. Right.
It's involuntary. But for the people that are pure evil, I'm talking the pure evil, those who literally kidnap kids in grocery stores and those who set up not even just and hear me when I say this, not like the legal brothels where people are like, oh, I just want to go do it. I'm talking like the legit, I mean, there's women just lined up and they are no more than just a slave. And they have to take the abuse of sexual things or use for different purposes.
Imagine it was your wife or your daughter.
Exactly. Like I'm talking like straight up, I will find you.
Straight up taken.
Straight up Liam Neeson, baby. Like I
have a special set of skills.
I don't know how to emotionally answer that
Yeah,
one.
right.
With the most evil of people,
Right.
and the heinous of crimes, and those who are just the serial killers, and not even just like you made bad decisions and you were bad, but like just pure evil. I don't know how I would handle that one.
Yeah.
But for the common law, I would say, if death has to be ensued, it's got to be for the most evil of all evils and at the most opportune time. But at the same time, if it was up to me, like, gotta vote right now, I'd be like, there's just too much iffiness of things. So I would say abolish it myself. Yeah. So,
I mean, if we know, like, all right, if you got the Ted Bundy or the Marilyn Manson and stuff like that, like, beyond a shadow of a doubt, they've been proven, canned in the cookie jar. Like, I probably wouldn't.
Or do you just deserve to be locked up at,
I probably would.
Gitmo?
I would probably be like, all right, the government's going to do what the government's going to do. And I'd probably like, okay. And then I'd sleep peacefully that night. Right. But like you're saying, like the people that, are they, maybe the evidence is on 100% candid cookie jar caught clear. Man, I'm scared to death. Be like, yeah, they should go be sent to death. And then maybe they turn out to be innocent. And like, I don't know.
And that's it. And so when this one guy, in his 20s killed a cop who just was executed. I don't know the full story. I'm not going to pretend that I do. But when I hear that, but then I hear what other people where it's like they literally abused person after person after person after person, and then after 20 years they walk. And I'm like, something is not right.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm saying. There's something not right. So I feel like there's, beyond this question, there's an even bigger question.
Sure.
And then that opens up a whole other can of worms that we are not going to go into tonight.
No.
I love it, dude. And oh, gosh, I don't know how to go into fun facts with Fuller after a conversation like this, so I think we're just going to rip the Band-Aid off and go for it.
All right, go for it, buddy.
Time for Fun Facts with Fuller.
What you got for us, my dude?
All right, today's fun fact is, did you know that competitive art used to be an Olympic sport? Between 1912 and 1948, the International Sporting Event awarded medals for music, painting, sculpture, and architecture.
I did know that.
What?
Because I read it on your screen.
Oh, okay.
My bad.
I
think that's
we'll allow
stupid.
It. We'll allow it.
That's stupid.
I mean...
Nope, get your own event.
I mean, he's like, no, the Olympics are for
The Olympics are for
athletes.
athletes.
You are not allowed to give out awards. Don't worry.
I'm not saying we go back to the OG days where dudes be wrestling naked. I'm not saying do that. I'm just saying keep it sports.
Yeah.
Like, now I do think I am excited for flag football in the Olympics.
Okay.
Coming up. I think that's going to be really, really dope. Did you see that? They're having flag football. And the NFL and Olympic community just to prove that NFL players can play on Olympic teams.
Oh, that's cool.
So we're going to see what's going on. I also I like skateboarding. Dude, I love it. Make golf an Olympic sport too.
Sure.
Make all the sports Olympic sports.
But you know what else should be an Olympic?
Make architecture and art.
What should be an Olympic sport?
What should be an Olympic sport?
RTC.
No,
listening and
not.
joining the RTC.
It is. Sometimes it is a marathon. I will say that. Sometimes it is a grind to get through some of these episodes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it might be a little like you're climbing the mountain.
And sometimes we just stumble down right into fun facts. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed this episode.
Absolutely.
And continue to listen to us and tune in. And if you haven't already, go over to our Facebook page and type in Real Talk Christian Podcast Community and join the community page because this is where the conversations really happen and where, mainly Marc gets to have a lot of fun with those.
I've been a little silent the last couple of weeks.
I haven't been really involved in the past like 2 years or whatever, but I get in there every once in a while. So if you haven't already, go over there and join that.
Yep, absolutely. And just like always, make sure you leave a rating and review anywhere you listen to podcasts. Apple Podcasts, we're trying to hit our goal of 350 reviews. Help us get there. Spotify, let's hit that 2,000 ratings mark. So let's get those done. When you do, we read your rating or we read your review here on air and we get your mini swag bag in the mail. And if you don't listen, you can always head over to YouTube, hit the subscribe button and the bell notification. Normally this is due. So when we're on, you know, and you can see our wonderful faces as I whack my camera.
That's right. And if you need a Bible, please reach out to us. We do donate Bibles to those who are in need, or if you know somebody who's in need, please let us know. Give us an address and a name at realtalkchristianpodcast@gmail.com.
Absolutely, man. Hey, we're going to end this one. So we love you guys. And until next time,
Take it easy.